Hello and welcome back to the Boxing Social podcast in association with Betfred, with me, your host, Rob Tebbutt. Just a reminder before we get started that all of our podcasts are available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And if you could please like, comment and subscribe, that'd be great. Today, I am joined by the new IBF flyweight champion of the world, Sonny Edwards. How are you, Sonny? You're also now the distinction of being the only second-time appearance or second-time guest on the Boxing Social podcast. So as good as becoming world champion is, I'm assuming that that's just that much sweeter for you now.
Yeah, I mean, accolades and achievement, you got to celebrate everyone, no matter how big or small. So I'd like to thank my team, the same people that were around me the first time. They're still here the second. So, yeah, hopefully to a third time.
Hopefully so. Maybe we can do the third once you unify.
Yeah, I mean, or maybe just defend. You know what I mean?
Well, steady on, mate. We can't get you in for every defence. No, on all seriousness, I have seen you, spoke to you since, but congratulations, new world champion. Sunk in yet?
It's getting there. It's getting there. But at the same time, my feet are still very much where they were before the fight. My goals are still the same. My aims are still the same. I said it in my interviews after. I expected to win. Probably why when it was getting hard in there, I weren't panicking. I stayed very relaxed, very composed. I knew what I had to do. And yeah, I think it was a game plan executed perfectly. I had great work in my corner from all camp, not even just on fight night. Yeah, like I said, I've always said I know how good I am. So I always expected to have a world title at some point in my career. Really, I did and do. I never thought, it would just be one either. So now the hard work starts. I've got a bounty on my head now. And a few people that have turned down fights in the past, numerous occasions, and didn't want to know Sonny Edwards because they've been saying what they've been saying. They're waiting for the fight to get bigger, or they'll fight me at world level. But now, because I'm there, why would I be in a rush to sort of give it to any of these? I mean, it's got to make sense for me. I've got arguably the best team in boxing. It's like I've got the Avengers assembled around me. I'm like Ant-Man, you know what I mean? Or Doctor Strange. But yeah, I've got a great team around me, so now it's just taking one step at a time, and every fight's make or break, really. If I can string 5, 6, 10 wins together at this level I'm at now, I could go down as one of the best lightweights we've ever had in this country. So I know what's at stake for me now. I've finally got myself at the level and the platform that I've been working towards. And now it's about making it count. They say it's easy to win a world title, it's hard to keep it. Do you know what I mean? That's what you're told. So yeah, hard work starts now.
Right, before we talk about what's coming in the future, what potentially could come in the future, let's go back and talk about the fight. Haven't spoken to you in detail about the fight. Looked pretty easy in there, but obviously we knew it wasn't going to be. Maruti Mifilane is a long reigning champion, somebody who's been around the sport. I think he was unbeaten 13 years before the fight. Was it as easy as it looked in there?
It didn't feel easy. Probably that was why I scored it on the night the way I did. On looking back, I scored it a bit different, a bit wider for me. It wasn't easy in there. It was a lot of hard work. The mental capacity that I had to draw on was probably deeper and harder than I ever have before. I mean, it was like a mental game of chess, and I had to make it that way because physically, even though I'm 13 years younger than him, I'm probably not physically stronger than him. I'm probably not harder or hit harder than him or tougher than him, if I'm perfectly honest. And I think my engine's there, but my engine's runs when it's working the way I make it work. I mean, if I stood there in the pocket and just traded him, I probably wouldn't have the engine I do have. Do you know what I mean? My body and my style has been developing to box the way I do for a long period of time, over the long rounds. And I told him what I was going to do. I told anyone that would listen how I was going to do it, and I did just that. I think I've got a very hard style to beat, and I think that's what makes it look easy, is the way I'm making them box. If I just stood there, and I think we only I think I landed on CompuBox I'm like 170 punches, and he landed 100 or something. And most of his were jabs, and most of mine were power shots. But if I stood there and it was like a 3,000 punch fight, it would have been very, very different, the result and the outcome. So yeah, it weren't easy in there. It was a very hard fight, a very hard night. Took me places I've never been before. Had to dig deep for myself. because even though the fight wasn't getting like hard with the action that was going in it, it's when you're in against such a good fighter, is you can't really make any mistakes. Because there was a couple of times he caught me and caught me clean, and if I was moving on to them shots rather than moving away, it would have hurt a lot more, and you would have probably seen me go down like you've seen against Marcel or Granados. But I had to make sure my feet were under me the whole time, and I was in the right place where I needed to be the whole time. I couldn't switch off. I couldn't. Had some little niggles going in there before the camp, or all camp, to be honest, if I'm perfectly honest. Um, but once I was in there, everything was fine. My adrenaline for me is like it's like a superpower, if I'm honest. Like, it might sound a bit crazy, but I've put my adrenaline through, 8.5 rounds of snapped ligaments in my ankle. I've put for 10.5 rounds, or even full fights with no hands. Do you know what I mean? So I got in there, and my adrenaline took me through, and I was reminded every time I needed reminding of what I was doing it for. Grant knows me so well. Grant knows me as well as I know myself, and probably as good as anyone really does, because he's been with me pretty much all my adult years since I was 18. And obviously, before that, 0 to 18, you don't even know you're born yet, do you? Let's be real. So he's been there pretty much the whole way from 18 to 25, and he knows me very well, and that's why a lot of people have been speaking about the relationship and the partnership we have and how it's underrated one and whatnot, and how good he seemed in the corner. But obviously we've got that chemistry and we've got that real history of depth that you can only build up after a long-standing relationship. If I was changing trainers every 12 to 24 months, I wouldn't have that. I wouldn't have that person that cares and loves for me the way Grant does. So when he's in there, he's fighting just as much as I am. I mean, that last 10 second klaxon when they banged on the ring, and you can see me just put my hand up and sort of run away for 10 seconds. Um, you can just see like a little flash of the corner, and even the commentary mentioned it. They were jumping up, started like screaming and getting excited, because it meant just as much for them as it does for me. You got to remember, Grant had me when I was 18 years old, like I just said, when I was fresh into uni, should I say. Funnily enough, when he first took me on, we only knew each other because me and Dalton had boxed a couple of times for England. The England coach who didn't like me. Bear in mind, I'm a difficult person. I've always been a difficult person. I'm a hard person to coach. I'm a hard person to just interact with it anyway. I know that to be true.
Why? What do you mean?
Oh, just so when I was on these England camps, bear in mind, you just go there when you're boxing for England, and I never I've always had the chip on my shoulder. I never got sent to a Europeans or Worlds, even though I won 6 national titles back to back from junior, youth, and senior level. Never got sent to a World, never got sent to a European. Someone's meant to get sent every year to one of those. Do you know what I mean? And when Grant took me on, the head of England like youth setup, who had just had me train. I'm not going to mention his name, but he was a friend of Grant's. And he went, "What are you taking him on for? You're not going to do nothing with him." That was the first thing he said to him. Do you know what I mean? And that was the familiar story. I was like I said, I was told on GB that I won't make it. I was told on GB that my style would work in the ABAs against ABA Johnny, but internationally it wouldn't until it did. And then when I left to go pro, a couple of the lads who I was friends with was telling me what all the other lads were saying, how they were kind of slating me. What's he gonna do with his style as a pro? The coach is half laughing at me for turning pro when I did, saying I'm stupid. Do you know what I mean? And now look, if I didn't turn pro, I'd still perhaps maybe be waiting for a Olympic space, maybe, which my weight got taken away 49 kilos anyway. Galal went to the last one, so probably would have got first pick for this, and I probably would have never even got the chance to close the gap on him. Like I didn't really the first time, even though we'd boxed, I'd won. But GB politics is a whole another conversation. But yeah, it's so good to be able to do it with someone that I know. Me winning is more than just the money's going up from here, and it's more than just their percentage is better. Do you know what I mean? It's a lot more to them. It's like a family affair. Do you know what I mean? It really, really is. And then Grant's a great coach, a very underappreciated and underestimated coach. But I feel like every time when he needs to get it right, he gets it right, there or thereabouts. And with me and the Moretti fight, he got it spot on. Everything he was saying to me for months in training to the build up. I listen 10% of the time. I'll be real, and I don't mean that in a rude way to him because he knows I listen to him. But with me, if you've seen the corners, he'll be saying stuff, and he'll be repeating stuff, and then I might respond to something that's been in my head that's not even in the conversation, and then he'll find a way to reply that and bring it back. Because the way I absorb things is, I struggle. Do you know what I mean? I've got that sort of ADHD where I can't just hear a sentence and boom, it's just. I mean, I'm better at visual stuff, looking at stuff, and so yeah, Grant knows me very well, and I've gone off on a tangent a bit here, but which I always tend to do. But yeah, I mean, he knows me inside out, and the fight was hard, but we'd planned meticulously for it. Done a lot of hard rounds. Some great fighters in the camp, Somba, who just needs to be higher rated than what he is. Somba, Brad Foster did a lot of rounds with Brad. Did some rounds with Marcel, Sean McGoldrick, Josh Padley. All bigger guys than me, really, and I fought a couple of them, but bigger guys, strong guys that are coming on to put pressure on me for whatever it was, 6, 8, 10, 12 rounds. And yeah, that's why I was so confident. I knew I was going to do it.
Now, obviously, Grant is not somebody who likes to hog the limelight. Hopefully, we'll see an interview with him this week. We'll say no more on that. So hopefully, we get to hear a little bit more.
I hope we don't. But...
of his version of events in the fight. What type of person is he away from the boxing gym?
He's funny, He's like a big kid. Always trying to have a laugh with people. Always trying to get everyone smiling. He really is that way. I mean, if you don't know Grant, you might take to him a bit wrong. He's like a diamond in the rough. He really is, and just because he doesn't articulate how he's communicating his advice and whatnot like the most elegantly, people don't always completely listen to what he's saying. But when you hear him talking about boxing, when you hear him breaking it down, he knows the sport. And not only does he know the sport, he puts very, very much the large majority of his time into studying it. He's watching every single fight that happens. You know what I mean? It's like every single time there's a fight week, me and Grant will, if we haven't spoken the night of the fight, we'll spend Monday going through all the cards. You know what I mean? As we're warming up and whatnot. You know what I mean? It's good to have someone that's probably as obsessed with the sport as I am, because a lot of boxing trainers, they're not. Do you know what I mean? And I'm someone that's been around most gyms and do you know what I mean? A lot of setups, and a lot of people love the sport, like the sport, do the sport because they're good at it. But there's not very many people obsessed at the highest level, because I think a lot of the time the love gets lost out of it a bit. Yeah, but with Grant, he does like staying away from the limelight, to be honest. Just because I don't think he feels there any need for a trainer to be on there. I mean, he's not trying to be one of these sort of the famous coaches that sort of stick out. He's not trying to be talking on BT punditry. That's just not. He just wants to do his things with the boxing, do right by his boxers, which is big for him, to make sure that, every decision he makes with his heart and with compassion. And for them side of things, you couldn't ask for no one better, I genuinely don't believe. He gets a lot of offers, from fighters. I'm obviously not going to name anyone, but unless he genuinely believes that he will be right for someone, or that he can invest 100% of his time and his commitment into someone, he won't, take him on half-heartedly if he hasn't got the time or the space. Do you know what I mean? He helps you way outside of just the boxing ring as well. I mean, everyone that's been through the gym can vouch for that. He'll help you with the moving process. He'll help you if you need work done to your house, he knows someone that knows someone. Do you know what I mean? He's very much anything you need him to do, he'll do. I mean, family's very close. Two of his kids are godparents to one of my sons. Go around his dad's and his mum's, or his parents' house, shall I say, with my kids on like Sunday dinners and whatnot, because obviously I don't really have that support network up in Sheffield. My family, for the most part, are in London. So yeah, I've been massively accepted into that, and it's just, I'm so glad that I'm getting to the stage now where it's starting to pay off now, all them years he's trained me, because obviously for the first large majority it was for absolutely free, and then the money started getting better and better. But obviously when you get to world level and headlining, it changes a bit, and now he's actually getting a good little drink off me, do you know what I mean? Whereas perhaps for my first fight he was getting a couple £100, do you know what I mean? For the hours they're putting in, it's next to nothing. Do you know what I mean? Everyone sees coaches and think, oh, a professional boxing coach must make loads of money. You don't. Do you know what I mean? It depends on what fighters you got, and I'm glad that I'm probably at one point I was the only pro Grant had, because he got his pro license to start training me again, because I couldn't train with him when I first turned over because amateurs and professionals weren't allowed, coaches weren't allowed to train both, if that makes sense. And then when it got changed, he got his license back and I came straight back. So I'm glad to be sort of like the leading light of it, and it's no secret that I help bring fighters like my brother, Lee McGregor. The reason why I'll use them two examples is because I always wanted to be Grant's first British and first world champion. Lee was his first British and Charlie was his first world. Do you know what I mean? And I've kind of, in a roundabout way, do you know what I mean, with our relationships. Yeah. They might have found him on their own. Maybe Lee more than Charlie, but obviously with the relationship that Charlie had seen us build, and that's why he made the jump over. But yeah, I have to settle for that, I suppose. But yeah, Grant's a great man. He really is a very good trainer. But like I said, he has no ambition to be seen as anything apart from a boxing trainer. So yeah, he's a very hard person to get on the mic these days. He is, because do you know what? Because he buries his heart and soul so much into it. And this is I've not even spoke to him about this, but one of the reasons why I don't think he is too forthcoming with the interviews and stuff is because he put so much heart and he put so much time, energy, and effort into his fighters, all of them, whether they've been with him for 8 years like I have or they just start. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, when fighters end up going their way or leaving, and then it's always sort of like a point in he doesn't really like that. Do you know what I mean? He understands fighters leaving, and honestly, he's the most laid back. If a fighter doesn't train with him, he won't be any sort of dismissive to him. He'll support him. He'll be there, support him. Like, for example, Levi, who's come down with me today, had a long relationship with Grant. Got to the point where Levi wanted to go elsewhere. He still comes and spars like once or twice a week in our gym, and twice a week does strength and conditioning in our gym. And you know what I mean, he's still part of the family, and that for me pays testament greatly to what Grant's really like, because you do know as yourself, a lot of fighters trainers part, and it will be bitter, it will be a bit resentment, even if they smile and shake each other's hand, and deep down, you know, there's always that bit of tension, but it's really not like that in our gym. It really isn't, and that's because of the main man Grant. That's just the way he is.
You mentioned the chip on your shoulder. Grant's a very laid back character. You're laid back character, but you mentioned you've always had that chip on your shoulder. You've always wanted that kind of, I don't know, something to work against, I guess. Where do you think that comes from in you?
I feel like I put chips on my shoulder on purpose, to be honest, and I think it's deeper rooted into my psychology that I could even begin to explain or tell you. I've always been like it. I've always been the 10% in the classroom with that idea, that ideology, that perspective. If all my mates are saying one thing, I'll be the devil's advocate. Oh, what about this? Do you know what I mean? It's just sometimes I say things to be different. And I always, especially when I'm coming into a fight, I like not putting obstacles, but I like giving myself them little chips on my shoulder to sort of get the best out of me.
What was it for this fight? Was it? We saw you kind of going. I mean, you make me look quiet on Twitter sometimes.
Oh yeah, but that stuff is by the by. I mean, probably mentioning my brother on Twitter, if I'm honest. I didn't really need to do that. Do you know what I mean?
What happened with you and your brother?
Nothing really. You know, words get said, and sometimes, you know, as brothers do, they argue and they fall out. But we're all cool. Do you know what I mean? He's in a stage of his life now where he's focusing on his family, and I'm planning his next assault on the world super flyweight division, I believe. But when what was said, I was in camp, so I just focused fully on my fight, and you know, not perhaps patching relationships up outside of the gym. Do you know what I mean? It's just one of those things, to be honest. Obviously he's my brother, love him to pieces, but yeah,
You're very different.
we always have been like chalk and cheese. Our boxing styles, our mannerisms, or the way we talk, as people like to say. But that's probably why, because we've come up together. Do you know what I mean? And it does happen sometimes. People aren't always the same, and um, yeah, we're not the most similar in how we spend our time or what we like doing, people we like being around. But obviously, that's big bro. Do you know what I mean? And just so grateful to have someone that's always been that 3 years ahead of me. Because one thing that I had to, one thing that I had the luxury of having through my whole life is perspective hindsight. Seeing what Charlie done, how Charlie was managed, promoted, or even before that, all the amateurs, and sort of being able to plan myself 3 years ahead. Do you know what I mean? I've always had that luxury because of Charlie. All the mistakes that he probably has made throughout his career, both amateur and professional, I probably didn't make because of seeing what happened. I mean, even stuff like the business side of things, him and his career helped me massively get to the point of where I am now. So yeah, it's I'm always be grateful for that. Like he's never taught me that much in the sense of being my big brother, sitting me down, having long conversations with me, and you know, schooling me in that sense. Because if I'm honest, I'm quite advanced for my age, and probably always thought I was like his age anyway. Do you know what I mean? Growing up to now, so but seeing him live it and experience it, and getting to the highest of the highs, and having the setbacks and coming back from, and how fans literally lick your ass and think you're the best thing 1 minute, and then all of a sudden something happens and you're useless, you're exposed, you're washed, and his career is probably styled how my persona, my image a lot. Because if I'm honest, I set out very early on to know that okay, I'm never gonna be a company man. I'm never gonna be trying to please everyone because I just wouldn't be able to maintain that sort of image. I wouldn't. Like, there'd be way too many cracks in my armor. Do you know what I mean? I just couldn't even try. So I probably went the opposite of if I show my personality quite bare early on, people get accustomed to it. Then it won't be a massive shock. And now, if I'm a world champion, people start screenshotting old tweets of nonsense I've been saying because you know what I mean. I've been doing it. Whereas I think maybe it's a bit of our personalities, a bit different. But Charlie was always wanting to do everything the appropriate way, the correct way, the like, sort of like media friendly way. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I'm not really asked. You know what I mean? I'm a boxer. I've been fighting pretty much all my life. If people want to look up to me as a role model or as an inspiration, because this is usually what I get. Oh, what about being a role model? What about being? Look at me for what I do in the ring and how I, handle myself around. I don't think I'm a bad person, but I'm someone that gets punched in the face. I'm not meant to be a voice of reason or your political standpoint go to. You know what I mean? It's just that. So I've always sort of led with that. And then if people want to get behind me or like me, then at least I know I'm being genuine to who I am. So therefore, whether people like me or not, I've not created sort of like an image, and then people don't like it, and then that was going to make my head fall off. Do you know what I mean? And I think a lot of boxers do struggle with what comes with being a boxer, not the fighting. I think that's the easy part. I mean, we only have to think about this weekend and how quickly things change and how you can go from being a warrior to 1 minute to people saying that you quit. Do you know what I mean? You just got to take the rough with the smooth because in boxing, that's what you get paid for. You're not getting paid for the work. You're not getting paid for the fighting even. You are, but you're not really. The reason why you're getting paid is because you get archived in the history of boxing. Do you know what I mean? Every time you fight, potentially, if something that you do goes down in history. Do you know what I mean? And we don't know when history is going to get made. Obviously, some big fights it lines it up, but you don't know when the next big story or the next big knockout or we just don't know. So you've always got to be prepared for that. And I feel like that's one thing at my young age I've really managed to do. And with that, not having the fear of setting myself up for a big fall. I mean, if I lost to Maruti, I was very prepared for a whole shitstorm of what was going to get said about me. And I was prepared for it because at the end of the day, anyone that's going out there and saying all this stuff, I don't think they know about boxing more than me. So therefore, if you're commenting on my boxing, I don't think you really can do that. Like, no one I'm going to take seriously. Do you know what I mean? No one with a qualified boxing opinion in my mind. So it's just idiots on Twitter, really. But it does affect a lot of people in big ways. What blank profiles, and it's been a massive sort of campaign that we're going through right now. I know BT weren't even tweeting or doing anything on social media during my fight week, and because they was doing the say no to online hate, which is, I understand some things are much bigger than sport, and it's kind of ironic that of all the fighters in the whole world, on my world title, it was like social media abuse that was sort of locking off all the coverage. You know what I mean? For me, like, but I'm glad maybe at the same time, if I'm honest, because it does sort of highlight the reason why I act and respond the way I do. At the end of the day, I'm a human being. If people were speaking to me how they speak to me on there in the street, you'd have a reaction out of me because they do it by the computers. They think it's just going to sit with you and me. It doesn't really bother me, but like, there is a lot of people that it really does affect, and it's not nice. It's not nice.
You think you've learned how to utilise it to your advantage, though? It feels like you have.
Definitely, because half the things I'm saying on there are tongue in cheek, first and foremost. So half the things I'm saying on there, I don't even fully believe. But what I do know is now I'm the champion of the world. I've got a lot more people ready to support me and sort of rally around me. Do you know what I mean? Because obviously, at the end of the day, without being too sort of controversial, fans come and go. Do you know what I mean? They blow like the wind. That's why they're called fans. And that's what you need. You need to be hot. You need to stay hot. But in boxing, it's not like with football teams where someone aligns to you. That's it. So I'm your fan. No one else is. It's not a sport like that. So you've just got to understand that you might be the best thing since sliced bread one week, and you might be a washed up useless bum the next. And you just got to understand that that's the game that we're in. And with boxing, you fight and then you get to celebrate or mourn over a loss or victory for months and months and months until you can get back on track. If you ever do get back on track, it's not football where you play midweek or we got Brighton away next week. Do you know what I mean? We have to live with what happens in the ring, and that's why the O scene is so important. That's why records are so protected. But I haven't managed to really take myself away from that ego of what's coming with it, because it's that side of things that makes boxers sort of petrified to fight anyone. If they weren't in sparring them, you see fighters all the time way below levels jump in with killers for sparring and be happy to go be sparring partners and whatnot. So it's not the actual fighting, it's they start wanting to pick and choose opponents because if that banana skin goes wrong, that's it. People are going to think I'm useless. People are going to think I'm finished, exposed, and really, it's not what you lose; it's what you win in boxing. You could lose 100 times, but then if you have a run of 5 fights and go on to win, to unify the belts of the division, what people really going to remember you for? You know what I mean? So I've managed, I think, disconnect myself from being scared of what comes with boxing, and with that lack of fear, I've been able to sort of extend my reach to the point of I did take on the Ring Magazine #1 in my 16th fight for less than 5 years as a pro. He'd had more knockouts at world level probably than I'd had fights, you know what I mean? Or at least at a better level than whatever I've been fighting at. And I still managed to go in there and do that because I did detach myself from that fear. If I listened to what the bookies were saying or whatever was saying, I would have pulled out that fight. Do you know how many messages I've seen? Oh, terrible matchmaking. Frank Warren's done it again. Sonny's going to get knocked out. Like, to the point of a couple of them, I was laughing. Like, oh, let me just get on the phone and cancel the fight. But you can't let people put you in a box. And that's what, in this world we live in, everyone tries to do. They always try and, sort of restrict what someone can do with their sense of what's logical, what can be achieved. And you got to step out of that straight away and just listen to the people around you and the people that you trust. Because we've seen it time and time again with how fickle boxing is. That's why we love it at the same time. We love that you can win one fight and all of a sudden all these people that have been calling me a hype job, overrated, we've had time and time again when I was beating the people like Braithwaite or a Somba. I could list and give them some exposure, but I don't need to. But even like proper boxing people that wanted to sort of, Sonny was a hype job, I'm not sold on him, But then weeks before my world title fight, they're asking for interviews, and now I wonder what their opinion is now. Do you know what I mean? Because until two people get in the ring, You can't actually decide who's better, no matter what they've done before, what they've done before. You just can't. Styles make fights. Boxing is way more intricate and complex than that. But everyone wants to reinvent the wheel and think that they're some sort of mystic Meg and knows everything that's going down, and every time they, half guess a correct result, they think they're the messiah. Do you know what I mean? This is boxing, what we live in, and then because it's an opinion sport, I mean, unless you knock someone out, it's three people's opinions on how they've read the fight. Is who gets the win, who gets the credit, who gets the belts, the plaudits. You've got to be ready for everyone's opinions. Do you know what I mean? Because otherwise, it's just going to end up miserable. And I think boxing probably does take it out of people when they struggle to understand that. Do you know what I mean?
We spoke a few weeks before the fight where I came up to Sheffield, and we'd spoken about kind of the last 6 or 7 months, really. We've seen Daniel Dubois, Willie Hutchinson, Anthony Yard. It's not been a great time for BT Sport Boxing. You've ended that. You went in there with the number one flyweight in the world, according to Ring Magazine. You were written off. You were the underdog at the bookies. It feel good to get that one over the line? Do you not really think about things like that?
If I'm honest, if I'm perfectly being 100% honest, as a boxer, you sit there and think, well, if BT needs someone to step out and get a win, let's be real. Don't get me wrong, these are all good fighters that you listed, obviously.
No disrespect to them.
And a lot of them have been in good fights, you know what I mean? And I weren't saying that, but what I'm saying is...
sure, I get that.
But in order for me to be seen as a great fighter, I need to put myself out there as a great fighter. Hence why I was so desperate wanting one of these fights where I can really prove how good I am. Because now I can win that fight in the way I did against Maruti, and all of a sudden, it's a masterclass. It's one of the best performances in a British world title ring. And now I've got something you can promote first and foremost. And looking at it from a boxer in a solely selfish view, it just makes me that little bit bigger of a fish, And I'm a British boxing fan as well as a boxing fan as well as a boxer. So I like British fighters doing well against other countries. Naturally, I want us all to win because I don't like the other countries being able to sort of give us one over on Twitter because I'm a part of boxing Twitter, as I've said before. So I feel it when anyone loses from Britain, you know what I mean? Because you have to get the stick on boxing Twitter. But when there is only 5 British world champions now, it makes your name stand out on paper that little bit more. Like if there was 4, stand out that little bit more. If there was 3, 2, if you was the only one. So, yeah, in one sense, obviously, I wanted to give Uncle Frank a win, which I did do. But it's just one of them. It's all swings and roundabouts. All them fighters will come again. I mean, I've seen firsthand my brother lose for a world title. He's exposed, he's this, he's that, he's never going to win nothing. 2 years later, WBC champion of the world. So, I've seen ups, downs, and sideways. And luckily for me, my career has always been very much first attempt. I've won all the titles that I wanted to win first attempt. Passed my driving test first attempt. You know what I mean? It's like, I've been quite lucky to do that with hard work, with right preparation. And I feel like Frank's done a phenomenal job with me. Over MTK, my advisor Daniel Kinahan. I've got the best around me. And look, I knew I was having step up fights all the way to prepare me to a fight like this. Just because people that don't know boxing to the extent of knowing how to read into people's records and how to look at who they've fought and actually watch what's going on in the ring when people are in journeyman mode for a bit of their career and chalking up losses but then do you know what I mean? But I knew I was getting myself prepared for an elite level fight for the last couple of years. That's why I've always been picking the harder opponents when I get listed free. I knew I'd be ready at the right time and how good I could be and I proved that. And so yeah, it's been nice to sort of cement myself now where anytime you're seeing a UK top 10 pound for pound, I'm there now. Do you know what I mean? Just because they always put the world champions first. Let's be real, and I'm one of them. Do you know what I mean? So I'm at least 5 or 6 or something on these lists. And it's nice. It is nice, but my manager, someone who's been with me since day dot as a pro, Anto, he told me one thing very early on, and it stuck with me for the whole. I've mentioned it numerous times. I don't think I've ever quoted who told me it, but I always say a wise man once told me. Create the hype, but never believe it. Don't start thinking you're indestructible, you're unbeatable. I can't think that for a second. I've got to have that fear of getting in the ring with a killer. I've got to have them the back of my neck, going to sleep, and for a couple of minutes before, 3 or 4 weeks before a fight night, thinking about how good my opponent is. I need that to get the best out of me. And I think you probably would agree that it was the most switched on, the most alert, the quicker my reactions had ever been in a pro ring, really. Definitely since Farag fight, when I was very overly switched on for that as well. But that's what I need, someone to drag that out of me. I've already done it, and the other world champions will do it, and anyone now coming to take my world title will do that, because I know that to get to these stages, they're very good fighters.
You've spent a number of years really calling everybody's name, certainly domestically. You mentioned at the start of the podcast that you weren't able to get those fights, even when you were British champion. You were never able to get anybody in the ring now. Slightly different change in mentality now. You're very much going to be the hunted now as opposed to the hunter.
Yeah, most of the people in Britain always said to me, or to whatever conversation they was having, I will wait for the fight to get bigger. We heard that from Mafosa. We heard that from Harvey Horn. We heard that from Tommy Frank. I could probably everyone else as well. Do you know what I mean? That was the. Bear in mind, I was trying to fight these for Southern area titles. That's what I said I'd fight Harvey for, because English had a champion. When he mentioned my name, the first name time he mentioned me in my interview, and I said I'd fight for a Southern area title in the next fight, and then his response was, I'm sick of him." You know what I mean? And then it was, well, wait for the fight to get bigger in the future. Wait for it to be for a world title. Andrew Selby said that. I think on Twitter it was. Went on record saying it. Oh, yeah, I would only fight him for a world title. That's fine, but when it's my world title, like, you've been blocking my career. Because bear in mind, the first thing I'll openly say is, all the MTK flyweights, super flyweights, I put my name to fight any single one of them at any time. So I'm talking any time. I've always said, and I'll constantly be saying, I want these fights. But no one ever wanted to fight me. It was always for a world title, or when it gets bigger, or down the line. It really, really was. And if I would love people to come and try and disagree, because I've got the screenshots, the conversations, I've got the back and forths, as well as the Frank Warren, his office, his team, contacting and pretty much every super flyweight in Britain to try and get me defences for my British title. Trying to get me when Tommy Frank left when it was up for purse bids, waited 2-3 months for the purse bids to come round. They pulled out of an hour before it closed in. Didn't even check, didn't even hear the offer, nothing. And then because he pulled out, I was the only one left. So I went, look, I'm ready now for the British title as soon as you can get someone for it. Marcel eventually stepped up. But like I said, no one's ever been in a rush to fight me. And if it was up to me, I probably would have had the British title won outright by now. It's proof when I'm a champion for 18 months and there hasn't been one mandatory made for my title. I've fought in this time, couldn't fight no one in Britain, offered it to everyone. And now I don't know for 100%, but I think me winning the world title is forcibly vacated, which I'm not happy about if that is the case. But I guarantee that title will be fought for in about 3 or 4 months. And there should be a rule. I might try and sit down with the board, with Robert Smith. If you're holding the British title and you win a world title, remember you're representing the British board at this point. The British champion goes on to win a world. You should give me the belt outright. Because surely winning a world title is as, of a representation of a British fighter than defending it 3 times, especially when I was trying. Because I want that belt. That belt is beautiful. I want to have it in my kids' room. I want it in my trophy cabinet. I love that belt. I had it for basically nearly a year before they threatened to take my license off me if I don't give it back for insurance purposes. But yeah, I want that belt. And if my world title reign don't last forever and I come back down, I'll be coming straight back for the British title. So, do you know what I mean? It's like, I'll get that outright, one way or the other at some point in my career, even if I'm 39, dusting up some 20-year-old flyweights. You know what I mean?
You're probably boxing at bantamweight by that time.
Yeah, maybe. But genuinely, that's something I'd like to get changed, because I know it can't happen all too often that the British champion wins a world title. I know it doesn't happen that regularly. Do you know what I mean? Because more time they either lost for it or they vacated it to follow it. But
gone up through
that
the
wasn't the
levels.
thing with me. Mine was literally I'll defend my British until a world title was ready. So I wonder if I could. What was it? It was the Ali Act. So this could be something similar.
The Sunny Act.
The Sunny Act.
Yeah, I like it.
Do you not think that
No, I agree
where's
with
the
you.
hole? Where's the holes in my logic?
I agree with you. I
Especially if
I
they've
don't have any...
taken the belt off me now, which I don't know if they have. If they haven't, and I'm still champion, get me a mandatory. Get me a voluntary or mandatory. Yeah.
No, I agree. I think you make a good point. If you're representing the British Boxing Board of Control in a world title fight, I don't really see why the need for them to take it off you if you go and win a world title. So
Yeah, but someone said that it is vacant, and like I said, I don't know. I've never seen it in the rule book. I've never seen it. It's not been told to me. But if that is the case, I'll be bitterly disappointed because the British title, to me, is up there with one of the best belts in boxing. I'm a British fighter. I'm a proud British fighter. And I'm trying to champion the British flyweights, the lighter weights. You know, I'm trying to be that British fighter. Do you know, when for my weights, it's like people don't even know the difference between featherweight and flyweight. Let's be real. There's a lot of people that don't watch boxing properly. I just want to be that's that young or lightweight world champion. Do you know what I mean? But that's when I swear he's a lightweight world champion or something like that. But that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to champion British boxing with my style. And the style I've got is probably how a lot more British fighters would have success against these killers. We are born and raised in a country with so much privileges and luxuries that a lot of these other countries can't afford. But without these luxuries and without the sort of cotton rule wrapping that we all grow up in, really, don't get me wrong, it's hard. Life's hard for everyone. But in the grand scheme of things, if you drop someone in the middle of Somalia or Mexico or you know, Philippines or Nicaragua, their life is very, very different going to be to what we grow up as. The education, the access to doing anything, let alone boxing or whatever you really want to do. Do you know what I mean? So they get they get cut from a different material. So we have to use what we've got in abundance and you know, try and do the smart work and try and. So, I mean, I know we had so many good fighters that can really bang it out with the best of them. But on the grand scheme of things, we don't have the scrappers and the granite chins for the grand scheme of things that some of these other countries, they seem to have in abundance. You know what I mean? You could pick any one of the top 50 Mexican flyweights and you know they're going to be able to have a fight. Do you know what I mean? They're going to be able to sit there, button a gum, and have a scrap. You could just tell that. But perhaps we haven't really got the same. We haven't got the numbers first and foremost, but we haven't got them sort of attributes for the most part. Because a lot of us, we do live in kind of sheltered lives. Not everyone. Some people have had it really, really hard in this. But you can't. One thing that Adam Booth said to me in a conversation that really was something that was aligned with my views anyway. It's quite hard to disassociate a boxer's personality with their boxing style. It's like the Marxist theory, do you know, where the writer, no matter what they're writing about, how they're trying to write, they can't be disconnected from the work because it's always going to have some influence of them. Same way a boxer's style, approach, everything will have a large influence from what they're like outside of the ring and outside of the gym. And because of that is why I would never stand there with a Mexican or a South African world champion that's knocked everyone out and have it out with you. Because you've probably lived through a lot harder things than I have to get to where we are right now. Do you know what I mean? So I'll use my grammar school education and my quick feet and my quick mouth to try and make the best for me that I can. That's all you can do.
Something that Ismail Salas as well said to me once. He said the same thing. He has like a kind of a mantra of training fighters dependent on what part of the world they're from, or influencing fighters on what part of the world they're from. He said that when he took Jorge Linares was with Freddie Roach, and he said that he was boxing like a Filipino. He was boxing like up, come in, rattle off the combinations, and boxing essentially like Manny Pacquiao because he was young. And he said to him that he's a Latin fighter. You need to get the rhythm back in your work, and that kind of cultural stuff. So that's an interesting thing that Adam would say. Yeah.
Yeah, and something I genuinely believe, and the conversation was focused on that Boazzi and his style was one of the most balanced. Do you know, it's not like a puncher. He's not a brawler. He's not a boxer. Like, he's very much quite down the middle. Do you know what I mean? He's very balanced in all things. But outside of the ring, he is as well. He's a very balanced person. He's not, for how I know him, which is quite well, he's not very excessive. He's not very extrovert, but at the same time, he's not introvert. You know what I mean? He's quite
Down
in
the
the middle.
middle,
And
yeah.
then, do you know what I mean? He's God fearing, but you know what I mean? He's a young lad from London as well. So everything's sort of in the middle with him, and I fully do agree with that. Same way with me. I'm a divisive person. I frustrate a lot of people. I'm quite that, like, big
Little shit.
Yeah, Sean Turner, big sexy, named me the mosquito, or mosquito, as he would say. And yeah, and it's kind of what I'm like. I don't mind that some people watch my world title fight and say that was a masterclass display of boxing, one of the best I've ever seen. And on the other side of that, you've got all he did was run for 36 minutes. But anyone can do that. Do you know what I mean? I don't mind that I divide people, because I divide people with myself anyway. So it really it adds to me, because it is kind of my character. The way I box is an irritable way to box. It's quite a negative way. It's not the most exciting. It isn't, and I know that to some people, to a lot of people. But it gets the job done, and it gets me world titles.
You're the father of 2 young boys now. Would you ever allow them to box?
They'll learn, because I think they'll catch a bit more height than me, I think. Touch wood for them. But they're not going to be...
Chances catching you up already.
I know. They're not going to be 6'4" probably. So, we're small people in a big, scary world. So having, hands, as they say, is vital. Even if they never come to the point of ever needing to use them, having that confidence in your own skin that you don't walk out the front door scared of your own shadow. Because from my experience, my upbringing, and people I've seen around me, it's the ones that wouldn't back themselves in a fair fist fight that will be leaving the house when someone has half bullied them with something in their sock. Do you know what I mean? And that's genuinely how I see things. So have the discipline, have the routine of learning. I would like my kids to never need to make a living out of boxing. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, if they sort of click to it and want to do it, it would make me proud than anything in this world for them to do what they want and how they go and achieve it. So I've got a lot of respect for the sport. But if my kid come out of school at 18 and the only option on his plate was, I'm going to be a professional boxer, I can't do anything else, that wouldn't be a great place for them to be, I don't think. Because I know how hard it is. I mean, for me to have finally started having a success and sort of the exposure and the plaudits, I've had to do a lot of things to get it. And if I lost at any one between 1 and 16, even the last world title fight, I wouldn't be in the position I was right now. And for me, I've still got a long way to go. I've got a long, long way to go, and points to keep proving to people around me and to the sport in general that we can make exciting fights. I mean, me versus Maruti, since the Farag fight, was like the first one people was really excited for. And mostly probably because a lot of people thought I was going to get beat. So it was easier for them to get excited for me fighting. Do you know what I mean? Hence why the fight really that I'm solely gunning for now would be the Ring Magazine Now #1. I just beat the last Ring Magazine #1. Now I've got to beat the new Ring Magazine #1, which is Julio Cesar Martinez. Obviously, everyone knows the backstory there. But that fight would be same thing. Sonny's going to get knocked out now. Do you know what I mean? He did it against Murray. He's 176 years old. Do you know what I mean? All them shouts. He hasn't boxed in 18 months. But that's what it'd be. And they're the fights you make your legacy. Do you know, every time you upset the odds. Do you know what I mean? And that's the fight I would want to see the poster of. If I was a boxing fan, don't really care about the flyweights, but everyone in Britain would be like, hold on, the kid that done that to Charlie versus Sonny. It would be. Would it not? Like, come on, let's be real.
Yeah, no, of course. Everybody loves a story, and particularly something like that. Would that give you? I mean, I'm guessing that would give you that added motivation. I mean, he didn't get the win over Charlie, but he did in everything bar the result. Let's be fair. Would that add that little bit more spice for you?
Definitely, but in that sense, not more than me wanting to be number one.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, and I personally, I know me is Julio Cesar Martinez number one, me number two. I'd be more scared of getting in the ring with that Junto Nakatani. I think he's a better fighter.
Yeah, he's a good fighter.
I think he's better. I think he's got more to his arsenal. Bigger. He's smarter. And I think just as powerful, just in a more controlled way. But the bull type style of the Mexican Martinez, he's basically like a pocket-sized Canelo without the style,
Yeah,
shall I say, the finesse.
Yeah.
No, but he throws them mad uppercuts in the same way, and he's got that ruthless thing in him, and he's obviously backed by the same people, eating the same meats. So, yeah, that's the fight I'd like. I mean, I've already beaten 3 Mexicans. Don't see no issue making it 4.
The Mexicutioner. That's what they used to call out Roger Mayweather back in the day.
Yeah, well, just because styles make fights. Styles make fights, and the reason why I've always had such confidence at world level is because typically at the flyweights, it's never the skillful ones that really make it out. It's the puncher ones that can punch as harder than everyone else, typically, because they're usually like rock'em sock'em robots until someone goes down. Because they all get this style of being sort of so fast, so high, with the power. But see, me, I'm a bit different. And what usually happens is because flyweights typically have better engines than any other weight because we're smaller, we're more efficient. The reason why you can't do the running thing for 12 rounds at these weights is because your opponent doesn't typically slow down when they're not throwing that many punches because they're used to firefights with very many punches in every spar, throwing loads of do you know what I mean? But I can do it for 12 rounds at the highest level, like I've proved. Even when Maruti didn't slow down and was going and going and going and going, and he was making it at a very high pace, even though I was constantly making it a slower pace by my movement. He didn't really give me any room. He didn't sort of stand off me and let me have a little dance and a little look at him. He was working me and forcing the pace the whole time. But it still wasn't enough with what I can do and how I can do it. And then I'm a very hard person to win rounds at, but I'm also a very hard person to let be leading the fight. Because then I'll disappear for a couple of rounds and I'll win the next round and then disappear again and win the next, you know what I mean? I'm constantly changing my rhythm, changing my pace. I know when to take rounds off. I know how to score a fight very well, even whilst I'm in there. So yeah, like I said, it's just a big fight that I want.
What's a realistic timescale for that? Because obviously you've got mandatory, going to be brought upon you soon.
Yeah, I'm waiting to hear about that. I've got a letter from the IBF saying they'll have news on the mandatory fight, but until then, I don't know. But yeah, so I have that if that's what they say, and I don't know when that'll be. Probably late July, August.
Would that be the winner of Jay Harris? Jay Harrison's... No, that fight's off now, isn't it?
It's been postponed, but it wouldn't have been anyway, I don't think. There's a Filipino lurking around.
Sean Gibbons fighter.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name.
Yeah, Jason Momoa.
That's it, yeah.
But like I said, I've not seen nothing in writing yet, so until I do. But they're the whispers. I heard Mavriti mention it before that after me he'd have a mandatory, so I can only imagine that same goes with me.
Do you think, I mean, potentially silly question, because I'm not sure any fighter realistically goes into a fight and thinking, oh, this guy could beat me, but, well, they probably do. But do you think Maruti underestimated you slightly?
Definitely.
Yeah.
100%. Why wouldn't he, though? He's been every corner of the world, fighting every country's champion, and pretty much knocked most of them out in everyone's country. Why is he going to think a 15-0 kid with 4 knockouts? Oh, he's a good little boxer. No, he don't know. He only ever seen me spar 4 rounds max. 3 or 4 rounds max. Because obviously it was divided. And he probably thought what everyone else thinks is he can do it for 3. He can do it for 4. There's no way he's doing that for 12 against me. But I just don't really have the quit in me. So when it starts getting hard, I take it up. So when I've had a hard round, I have a little search in myself. And I get it cracking. I really do. But yeah, definitely underestimated me. Like everyone always has. Everyone always has. People think I don't punch hard enough. People think I can't take a shot. People think a lot of things about me. And maybe that's probably been my biggest weapon through my whole boxing career. I remember I was like 15, 16, weighing in for London finals. And I was a decent little amateur as well. I was quite known around the circuit. And this kid I was boxing, he had a similar amount of fights to me, similar record. But I just moved up from 38 to 46 kilo, and that's a big jump. And obviously, I didn't really grow that much. So he was like a foot taller than me, massive compared. And as we was weighing in, I was remember speaking to Andreas Wallace, who was a boxer from Repton at the time. And the kid's only walked up next to me, measured his shoulder to mine, and then laughed at me just before I was about to go on the scales. So I went, all right then. When I boxed him, I literally I got Steve Bunt said I was boxer of the day that day when he was doing them little radio things of the amateurs. I battered him with my hands down, sort of taking the proper piss out of him, and that from there gave me that sort of. Do you know when people underestimate that split second? That's when it's done for. And I've learned that myself as well. Do you know how many times I've got in the ring, say for sparring, even fights? Do you know when I know that I'm better than them? That's the most dangerous place to be in, because the moment that you're not better than them or as good as you thought you were, everything just sort of like unraveling. You're getting caught with shots you've never been caught for, and nothing's working. So I definitely think that Murray underestimated me, but luckily for me, a lot of people probably still will, because even though all the other champions have avoided him like the plague, they'll probably think, well,
he was old.
He's shot now. Do you know what I mean? Well, until I don't know if he's going to come back, but if he comes back and has a few more fights, I think we'd find out pretty soon enough that he's still got some legs in him, definitely. I know that for a fact. I've been in with so many people around the world, and that was a hard fight. Everything about it. He was blocking a lot of shots. He was making me miss a lot. He's a very good fighter. But, yeah, and so be it. And that's a good thing about having no knockouts is everyone just assumes you're not very good because you've got no knockouts. I mean, they just look at that and think, I can't be very good. But what I'm good at doing, I'm very good at doing. Great, even, I think. I've sort of prepared my style to have a long boxing career for as long as possible and hopefully take as little damage as I physically can. To compare Mavritti's fight with every single other person that he's ever fought, he's never had that fight before. Do you know what I mean? Every single one's been like wars, unless he's just sort of dusting people up. Do you know what I mean? He's never had the frustration, the chasing someone around the ring, and before you know it, 36 minutes has been and gone, and you're no longer world champion. That might not have hurt him. There might not have been one shot that hurt him with. I think I got his attention a couple of times, but there might not have. I didn't need to. Simply, I'm here to win and keep the ball rolling and going forward. I don't think personally that I'm the most boring person to watch, because I think there's a lot to what I do. But if you're just there looking for big shots and knockouts and people getting put on the floor, then you might think my fights are the worst.
Well, it depends on what you like, but I think that aesthetically you're a pleasing fighter. I don't think it's necessarily a case of, I know you're a big fan of his, but over the years we've seen some Rigo fights that haven't been very pleasing on the eye, and I think that's a very different style, although kind of similar ballpark, frustrating on the outside, trying to frustrate the opponent, but I think there's a lot to like about what you do. How were you at the weight? You looked very good at the weight when I came up to see you a few weeks beforehand. How did you feel down at flyweight? 12 rounds?
Great. It's the first camp I've ever proper applied myself. Yeah. I'll be
So I remember we did an interview probably about a year ago now, when you were just getting ready to come back. During the pandemic, and I remember you dropped a lot of weight at the start of the camp.
Skeleton,
and you looked like a skeleton. You didn't look great, no. But yeah, all good for this one.
Great. Had a long run up. Had 13 weeks. I didn't come as from that when you're talking about. That weight cut was 67 kilos. 67 kilos career world life highest for me. 67 to 57 in about 6-7 weeks. Held there for 6-7 weeks until I fought Somba. So obviously I went proper gaunt whilst my body sort of come back round from just sort of getting rid of two stone off my body. Do you know what I mean? But great, honestly. I don't know if you could see, all fight week, all thing I was eating, I was drinking. I didn't train. I didn't do hot baths. Normally I'm kind of living in a hot bath the last few days. Not living in it, but I'm doing one every night. Do you know what I mean? And getting that kilo off here, right, then going to bed with a bit of a dry mouth. I slept like a baby. for the first time as a pro the night before weighing. Normally, honestly, I'll get off at about 3 o'clock in the morning. I'll be up at 5. Just because it's hard when your belly's hungry and you got dry mouth. It's very hard to sleep when you're already kind of low anyway from what you normally are. To then have to do a complete dry out, it is a very hard sleep. It is. And I've never proper had to kill myself to get down anyway. And I've seen people a lot worse than me. But I applied myself. I ate right and properly and from a long way out. Had great advice and more than just that, had my meals being cooked for me by my strength and conditioning coach, Reese. My meat getting provided by Rendell's Butchers. Then partnered up and every Tuesday I was getting my meals for the week. Put them in the microwave and Bob's your uncle. But yeah, I did it very, very, very well. There was no big weight cuts. There was no panic. Every check weight. 2 of them I didn't even train before. When that's alien to me. Normally, it's like doing 1.5 kilos just to get on the check weights and stuff.
They end up having to make weight 3 times.
Trust me, and it's really that can be quite mentally draining and physically draining. And I've seen that in camps, in big camps, that to be the case when you're having to get like 2.5 kilos from where you are now just to please someone to come around on a thing and disappear. It's crazy, but yeah, flyweight no issue whatsoever. I feel like I've got a lot of developing still at flyweight as well. But I didn't feel like I looked that small at it. But one thing I will say about the weight, the next day, obviously it was IBF, so we did the rehydration check weight. I had a full tracksuit on, right, shorts, socks, my chain, my hat, everything. I left everything on apart from my shoes. I jumped on the scales at 120 pounds with everything on. I was allowed to be 122 because it's 10 pounds above the 112 limit. My rookie went all the way down to boxers, jumped on at 121.8 in the morning before he had breakfast. So I was only about 100. I woke up at about 116, 117 pounds on fight night, £5 heavier. When my opponent in the morning was the whole 10 pound.
And then he would have got heavier after that.
Definitely,
as well,
you could see how big he was in the ring. Like he'd literally been like, because obviously he's a lot older. He probably knows his thing. But with me, I don't pay too much mind. And I eat what I want to eat, and I drink what I want to drink after I've made the weight, and I'll get in there what I need to get in there as naturally. So I probably only got in the ring about 53.5, 54 kilos. Like genuinely, like. So yeah, it weren't no big stress. It weren't no big struggle. I'll be a flyweight for a long, long period of time if I want to be. I could probably, I definitely could make it down to light fly. I definitely could, and that might be an option if and when this world title reign ends. Maybe I think, let me jump down there, see if I can be a 2-weight world champion before then coming back up, going up to Superfly. Because I think I'll be knocking about all of these, once the roots are. Because I spar people and would fight people way heavier than me anyway. They can have the weight advantage. So when I seen him on the scales, with me having clothes on, 2 pound lighter than him. So really about 5-6 pound lighter than him in the morning, knowing that I'm gonna have some breakfast and then 1 meal because I have a long break before, knowing that he's probably gonna keep fueling all the way up all day. I knew he was gonna be so much heavier than me in the ring, and that doesn't bother me. So yeah, you'll probably see me at different times in my career doing quite crazy things with weight, fighting at bantamweight from flyweight just because I think I can. Do you know what I mean? Like
you've got the type of style that can transcend.
Well, I've always liked being in the ring with heavier-handed and slower people. Every weight they go up, they're slower.
Yeah.
Every single weight, even if it's 2 pound, they're slower. I've always struggled with the flyweight sparring more than the super flyers, the bantams, the super bantams. Really have. And I always like being in the ring with those bigger people than me when I'm the small, tricky, and elusive one. I don't really like having the height advantage. Do you know what I mean? I prefer being smaller.
What would be your dream fight?
Martinez. Right now, I don't think until the next chapter of my career there is no other fight. He's the number 1, I'm the number 2. He basically took the belt off my brother in a roundabout way. And he's probably the biggest name in Britain at flyweight, outside of Britain, and probably even in Britain. Do you know what I mean? Let's be real. The Selby, Jay Harris, and Charlie fights between that are going to make that happen. Number 1 versus number 2 in the division, the Ring Magazine, WBC and IBF. Like, it's not even close what other fight I'd want. And I think I'd beat him as well. Like, genuinely. I think he was made to look more of a monster than he is against my brother and Selby. I believe that to be true. Selby being over in Mexico, 10,000 feet above sea level, flown in on like the Monday or the Tuesday or whatever, and did well up to that point. My brother, who was weight trained,
He was destroyed at the weight.
destroyed at the weight, and it's his story to tell, so I won't go into details of it.
Yeah, but
But I've never seen anyone lose the amount of weight that has seen him lose for the day before to that.
Mm.
And my brother is not like me. He's not got a bit more to lose at the end because he's had too many Monster Munch or he had a takeaway 3 weeks before and do you know what I mean? Or he had a few too many Mars bars on the way to the gym. My brother's like a consummate professional. So everything's tracked, everything's traced. He had his last treat 6 weeks out. Do you know what I mean? So if he's having a lot to do at weight, he's already down. Do you know what I mean? So I think he was made look more of a monster like that. You could even see in the ring walk that he won. You know what I mean?
I remember seeing Charlie before the weigh-in. I remember looking at him and I remember saying to him, "Are you all right, Charlie?" And then I saw on the back of him and then he turned around and I remember visibly like feeling like, whoa. And he said, "Yeah, man, I'm good. It's my time." And I went, yeah, get on the scales.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? And there's more to that story, but like I said, it's his story to tell.
Yeah, sure.
But people can say, he was just beaten by the better man.
He might well have been beaten
100%. No,
regardless,
don't get me wrong. I think Martinez is a very good fighter, obviously. A great fighter, even. Going to be a bit derailed after our boxing, but he is a very good, very dangerous, very explosive. And he's got the style to make someone like my brother, struggle. He does. There's certain styles that my style works better with, and there's certain styles my brother's style works better with, and we've seen them because we've always been sparring the same people at the same time, do you know what I mean? So there'll be some people that I'll stand on the head, Charlie will struggle a bit with, then there will be people that I'll struggle with that Charlie will stand on the head. So there's always like the differences. And I feel like someone like Martinez has got quite a bad style for Charlie. But when he was jabbing and moving and he was landing, he showed that you can land. He showed that you can outbox him. But he just didn't have the engine. He didn't have the punch resistance. He just didn't have what he normally relies on. Do you know what I mean? Look at Casemiro. Would you completely say that that Martinez is a much, much, much bigger puncher than Casemiro at flyweight? No. I think Casemiro is a bigger puncher because Charlie would never have been able to take 30 punches unanswered and still be stood up against Casemiro. It's a simple fact. A lot more wilder, even though he's quite wild, but just relentless, isn't he, Martinez, when he lets his hands go? But Charlie took massive shots against Casemiro, walking on to big uppercuts in like early on, whole legs dipping, and Charlie can take a shot better than people give him credit for. And that's why it's probably more frustrating for him that he's getting all that sort of bad side of things where people are saying that he quit. Like 3 weeks before the fight, he said he was never making flyweight ever again. He said that to me and Grant. He said that, and that's on my babies, you know what I mean? Genuinely, and that was after, around about the time of one of them check weights. Do you know what I mean? He went, I'm never doing this again regardless. But he did want to, and then he tried, and then But I think those fights made him look a bit more of a monster than he perhaps is. And I think Jay's one maybe brought it down a little bit more.
Yeah, looks human in that fight.
Yeah, because he lost a couple of rounds. Jay was getting caught with some massive shots. And he was just there. Do you know what I mean? And this is, bear in mind, Jay got sort of rocked by Marcel Braithwaite. Probably as bad as he got rocked by Martinez. Do you know what I mean? Obviously he won and he did beat Marcel. But perspective. And with me, Martinez would, I think, have to knock me out. I do. I don't think for a second he's outboxing me. I mean, if it's over in Mexico, I probably won't get the scorecards, right? But he would have to, I think. And I'm a very hard person to knock me out. No one's done it yet. No one has done it. No one's really got close. Two people that put me down in my whole life. My whole life, I've never been put down in sparring, apart from my brother when I was like 15 to a body shot because I was being cheeky. As you can probably imagine. The only two people who've ever put me down, there's no one ever in sparring, Marcel and Granados. And both times, for me, it was switching off and being a bit complacent, if I'm honest. But with Moretti, he didn't get close to putting me down or really hurting me, even though he landed clean. And the same way, I think if Martinez boxed me, he'd be chasing shadows. And if anything, he's probably not as calculated as Moretti. Not as good as making the ring small. Because he just looks at you and starts throwing big punches from wherever he is in the ring and wherever his feet are. And for me, you can't do that with me. You can't. Because Moretti was trying very much to try and disguise, and then throw last minute with me. And I was still making him completely miss and fall into the ropes. So what about someone that's swinging and showing you his shot? I've got good reactions that are wired to react to every movement you're making. Not just, oh, okay, I see your glove coming, I might get hit at this point. No, I'm moving. Every movement you're doing, I'm moving. Every step you're taking, I'm stepping. People say, oh, we just move backwards for 12 rounds. Well, if he stopped just moving forward, I would have stopped just moving back. Do you know what I mean? I'll take one step out constantly. And if you're taking 10 steps forward, I'll take 10 steps back. So I can keep resetting to our neutral standpoint. Do you know what I mean? And that's why I think I'd beat Martinez. I really do. And I think I've mentioned it every time he's boxed. I've tweeted it. I've tagged Eddie Hearn. I've mentioned it in interviews. I've went and won an IBF world title. Eddie Hearn looks after him and Reynoso team. I don't think they'd want anything to do with me, to be honest. Even at this stage, I don't. Because really, what other bigger fights are you going to make right now than a unification, WBC, IBF, Ring Magazine, number 1, number 2, now? You've boxed his brother. You've already boxed 3 other British fighters. They haven't mentioned my name once. They haven't. Do you know what I mean? They didn't mind getting Jay Harris over for a voluntary defence. Never shouted me. Do you know what I mean? And surely I can't be the only one that sat there thinking this, because I know Eddie sees most of his tweets and people are tagging him and things. He's not put no response to that. Do you know what I mean? Which is fair enough, because I think Eddie rates me, to be honest, and I think the matchroom not know how good I am, and they know, people that know boxing. Yeah, you could look at that fight and think, well, Martinez is just going to knock him out. That's the probably easiest. But that was the same for Moretti. That was probably the easiest bet. Do you know what I mean? Most likely, if Sonny don't outbox him, that's what's going to happen. But he's not no boxing, so I think they'd know that if anything else, he would look quite bad at times. I mean, we've got people coming out of this fight. Don't get me wrong, these are the casual people. And even though they're my fans right now, we've got people coming out pretty much saying you made Moretti look useless. You made him look ordinary. You made him look... He's a very elite fighter, and that's what people don't understand. He's very elite. But the way I box, it's like you've been playing rugby your whole life, league, and now, okay, you've turned up and playing union. Do you know what I mean? It's the same, but different. There's different skill set required, different attributes that'll make you successful against me compared to what has been making you successful against everyone else. And when they look at me and just think, oh, look at his body shape, look at him, oh, look how... They always think, well, I could beat him, I could knock him out, I could get to him. But who has? No one yet.
Well, I'm in Manchester this week, so I'll ask Eddie about a potential unification. Sonny Edwards versus Julio Cesar Martinez. Where do you want to fight him?
I'll fight him anywhere. I don't think you understand. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me, because do you know what? Even if I've ever got to sort of go over to another side to defend or to win, knowing at the final bell, everyone knowing who wins is enough for me. Once decisions and judges get involved and all the scorecards, I mean, people could see my reaction to the scorecards of my fight. That sort of stuff, that frustrates me as such a fan of the sport more than it should as a boxer. Do you know what I mean? But so for them kind of things, I'm not really. Let's say if I was to go up against someone on an away day, most of the world think I won, and then I come off on a decision where I lost by a point or two. It wouldn't be the end of the world for me, do you know what I mean? I want to test myself in all these big fights. I know I'll put question marks over anyone. And Martinez could have me in Mexico as long as I have a good couple of weeks there before. Nakatani could have me over in Japan.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Boxing in Japan would be great.
But I will travel to anywhere. I don't need everything on my terms. I had my first world title, and I can't even, thank Frank and my team enough for getting a world champion, Ring Magazine number 1, over into the York Hall. Like, I had every single opportunity to win it there. I know that. I'm not stupid. Didn't need it. Didn't need, sort of any... what happened in the ring happened in the ring, and I think that would have happened in Britain. It would have happened in South Africa. It would have happened in Mexico, Japan. It would have happened anywhere. I'm a very fit kid. and I'm very smart. I know how to gauge my engine. I know how to win fights. So I would fight him anywhere. Obviously, he probably is the bigger draw by a long way. But that's definitely, maybe. I've probably got more Instagram followers than him, but he probably definitely is. And so he should be. Been in more high profile fights than me. But he's my jumping out of being a great fighter to
That's your
being
breakout fight.
to being elite. If I beat him in a similar style to how I beat Mavritti, could you imagine how boxing world would be perceiving me now? I'd be the next coming of Woody Pep. Like to do it against someone that, okay, we actually like a lot of people, they might have like a lot of people around the world have seen Mavritti because he's gone to all these different countries and fought. But like British boxing fans, he never fought a British kid, so they've not been exposed to him until now. So there's probably a lot of people that old, in this country in Britain would be like, oh, well, that's not a great win. Where more outside of the world would probably be like, wow, now we're taking note. Let's actually search up Sonny's fight against Mavritti and see what this kid's about. But really, they probably saw Mavritti Maflani defending his world title against 15 Sonny Edwards. That result was probably already made for most people around the world of boxing. To the point that they didn't watch, they didn't tune in, they probably would have thought, oh, he's going to come through that. Mavritti, their team were looking at what's next. Thinking beat me, mandatory unification. That's what they were speaking about, And obviously I've upset the apple cart massively on that. And I want to keep pushing on. I want the biggest fights. I don't care for long undefeated reigns and picking, 5 as easy as they come fights to sort of hold for a long time for a world title. I want to be the best. And I think I'm the best. So if I can fight anyone at this weight, anyone that can make 112 pounds, I can fight. So it doesn't really matter to me, but I understand boxing, I understand the business, I understand exposure, marketability. Martinez is the fight. It is. There's not even, Nakatani is not even half the fight of that. Even though, obviously, it is. To me, a harder fight. Genuinely, I mean that. I think his balance is much better. When I look for what a fight is going to cause me problems, it's not swinging big bombs. It's not hooping and uppercuts that touch your calf before they land. Because me, I don't think you're ever going to hit me with one of those shots, not in a month for Sundays. You've got to be very clever to land clean on me. So it's the balance, it's the composure, it's the discipline. That's what I look at as these are good fights. And I think Nakatani ticks those boxes, whereas Martinez isn't even close in those departments with me, I don't think. If I could punch like him, I'd be the most exciting fighter of all time. Do you know what I mean? I'm aware of that. But I got blessed with 2 amazing feet and not the best hands. So, you know what I mean? So I've got to make do with what I can.
Have to make do with the tools that you've got.
Definitely.
Okay, well, it looks like we're about out of time on the Boxing Social podcast. Thanks very much for making the journey down from Sheffield today. Always a pleasure catching up with you. Hopefully we can put the pressure on Eddie to make Sonny Edwards versus Julio Cesar Martinez, maybe on the Canelo Plant undercard in September. That could do with a good co-main.
Yeah,
that'd be all right, wouldn't it?
Obviously, I know I'm sort of speaking out of turn, but I've got a good team around me that'll get me them. But when you ask me, you sit there and ask me who would you want. It's not even. There's not even another answer for me to give you right now. My dream fight, this. Best fight I'd want in this division, this. I do rate him, don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting there thinking, oh, I'm going to punch his head in. Do you know what I mean? That'd be a very, very, very hard fight. Ridiculously hard, but a fight that would give the British fans a lot to be excited about, especially if I come through it. It'd be like a redeeming fight, and I know the British fans love that, and we kind of need it right now. We do, and I think I've got the style to do it.
Well, we look forward to it. Sonny Edwards, the new IBF flyweight champion of the world. We'll have you on for a 3rd time once you get your belt through from the IBF. But yeah, always a pleasure catching up with you, and hopefully catch up with you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.